A templon is a feature of Byzantine churches consisting of a barrier separating the nave from the sacraments at the altar. The solid templon first appeared in Christian churches around the 5th century and is still found in many Eastern Christian churches. Initially it was a low barrier, probably not much different from the altar rails of many Western churches. It eventually evolved into the modern iconostasis, still found in Orthodox churches today. It is usually composed of carved wood or marble colonnettes supporting an architrave. 3 doors, a large central one and 2 smaller flanking ones, lead into the sanctuary. The templon did not originally obscure the view of the altar, but as time passed, icons were hung from the beams. Curtains were placed in between the colonnettes, and the templon became more opaque. In modern Orthodox churches, it is common for the openings of the templar to be constructed specifically to contain icons. Origins. The templon most likely has an independent origin from that of Latin chancel barriers. Classical stage architecture is one possible source. At certain times during Byzantine history, theatre heavily influenced painting and sculpture. Architects then, influenced by stage backdrops dating back to Sophocles, consciously imitated the classical proscenium, copying the multiple columns punctuated by a large door in the middle and 2 smaller doors to each side. The statues on top of the backdrop would thus be analogous to the icons of the saints looking down. The similarities, however, are probably only visual. Although classical drama was performed in Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, during the 5th and 6th century when the first Templar appear, when Christian liturgy was first being developed, the plays and their architecture had lost their importance and could not have influenced Christian ritual. A much more plausible theory is that the templon models in both form and content the decorative wall of the Torah screen in Jewish synagogues of the 2nd and 3rd centuries. These, too, had 3 main divisions: a central door leading to the altar, smaller flanking passages, and a distribution of parts similar to a templon. The Torah screen was probably not the direct prototype of the templon. It probably derives from the imitation of the Torah screen in the altar of a typical Syrian pagan temple. A direct comparison can also be made to the layout of the Great Temple in Jerusalem. That temple was designed with 3 parts. The holiest and innermost portion was that where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. This portion, the Holy of Holies, was separated from the second larger part of the building's interior by a curtain, the veil of the temple. Only priests were allowed to enter the Holy of Holies. The third part was the entrance court. This architectural tradition for the 2 main parts can be seen carried forward in Christian churches and is still most demonstratively present in Eastern Orthodox churches where the iconostasis divides the altar. The Holy of Holies containing the consecrated Eucharist, the manifestation of the New Covenant, from the larger portion of the church accessible to the faithful. In the Eastern Orthodox tradition, only men can enter the altar portion behind the iconostasis. Barriers called templons in Greek were also used on occasions when the Roman emperors appeared in public, to segregate the imperial retinue from the crowd. Etymology. Templon is a loanword in Greek, from the Latin templum, temple. How and why it came to have its present meaning is unclear. The most obvious explanation is that the form of the templon resembles a pagan temple. The steps up to the apse are analogous to the stereobate and stylobate of the temple. The colonnettes arranged in the pie shape resemble the columns that surround all 4 sides of a temple. The architrave look like the architrave on a temple, and the carved discs on the architrave are analogous to the metopes on the entablature. However, it has also been suggested that the name Templon derives not from the pagan temples but from the Christian idea of the shrine where God was worshipped. or more specifically the Temple in Jerusalem. In almost all modern European languages, the word Templon is a direct and late borrowing of the Greek architectural term, and it is rarely found outside the academic usage. Besides the Greek templon, another direct descendant of the Latin templum, having the same architectural meaning, is the Romanian word Templar, iconostasis. Early Templar. Archaeological evidence for an early templon comes from the Hagia Ioannis studios in Constantinople, a basilica dedicated to John the Baptist. Built in 463, the chancel barrier surrounded the altar in a pie shape, with one large door facing the nave and two smaller doors on the other sides. 12 piers held chancel slabs of about 1.6 meters in length. The height of the slabs is not known. The chancel barrier was not merely a low parapet. Remains of colonnettes have been found, suggesting that the barrier carried an architrave on top of the columns. Many fragments of a marble templon have been discovered on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, though there is some architectural and archaeological evidence of early Templar. The first and most detailed description of a templon comes from a poem by Paul the Silentiary, describing Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. It was composed near the end of Justinian I's reign and was probably recited on Epiphany, January 6, 563, celebrating the re-inauguration of the church after the reconstruction of the Great Dome. Hagia Sophia's templon surrounded, according to Paulus, such space as was reserved in the eastern arch of the great church for the bloodless sacrifices. That is, it stretched the length of the eastern semi-dome, including the apse but excluding the exedra. 12 silver-covered marble columns of approximately 4.94 meters from base to capital were arranged on three sides of a rectangular ground plan. Around the altar, a horizontal entablature rested upon these. 3 doors allowed entry to the apse, the central one larger than the other two, though earlier scholars have proposed that all columns and all doors were in a single line parallel to the apse. Modern reconstructions show the central portal facing out to the nave with the smaller doors each located on the other sides of the rectangular plan. In between the columns were slabs of marble covered in silver about 1.00 to 1.10 meters tall. On them had been carved the monograms of Justinian and Theodora, even though Theodora had been dead for several years, as well as a many-armed cross in the center. On the center of the architrave was a repoussé medallion of Christ. On either side of him were medallions of angels, the prophets, the apostles, and finally the Virgin Mary. The carvings on the architrave were deeply tied to the liturgy. Another templon roughly contemporary to Hagia Sophia's is that of the church to St. John of Ephesus, rebuilt by Justinian as a domed crucifix. There was an inscription to St. John the Theologian over a side door, since the crypt of the saint was within the enclosed sanctuary. St. John the Baptist was probably carved over the other door of the templon of Hagia Sophia, since he features prominently in liturgical writings of the church. In any case, the majority of Templar followed the same basic design. They were usually carved of monochrome marble, though some, like Hagia Sophia's, were covered in precious metals and others used polychrome marbles. The slabs were often carved with vegetal or animal patterns and the architraves with busts of God, the Virgin, and the saints. Figurative decoration on the templon was mainly concentrated on the architrave, initially with carved busts. This continued from the time of Justinian into the Middle Byzantine period, as shown from a 10th-century excavation in Sebasta in Phrygia, which uncovered a marble templon whose epistyle is covered with busts of saints. There is evidence that icons were hung from the columns of the templon prior to iconoclasm. Important portable and colossal icons were also placed in front of the templon, as in the 11th century church of St. Panteleimon in Nurtsai. Evolution. The templon gradually replaced all other forms of chancel barriers in Byzantine churches in the 6th, 7th, and 8th centuries except in Cappadocia. As late as the 10th century, a simple wooden chancel barrier separated the apse from the nave in the rock-cut churches, though by the late 11th century, the Templon had become standard. This may have been because of the veneration and imitation of the great church Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. Though the columnar form of chancel barrier does predate Hagia Sophia, the Templon began to change forms to the medieval Templon with the attachment of icons and painted scenes to the architrave. Some of the best preserved of these images are from the St. Catherine's Monastery on Mount Sinai in Egypt. The late 12th century Templon beam shows 12 canonical feast scenes, with the decis located in the middle, between the Transfiguration and the raising of Lazarus, linking the scene of Lazarus with the Holy Week images according to liturgical practice. Several epistyles of this form have been excavated throughout the empire, none earlier than the 12th century, indicating a change from busts on the architrave to scenic decoration. This new scenic style is representative of the increasing liturgification in Byzantine representational art after iconoclasm. During most of the Middle Byzantine period, the space between the colonnettes was not filled with icons but with curtains. Nicolaus Antidorum describes in his Protheria the shutting of the doors and the closing of the curtain over them. The most widespread image on the medieval Templon seems to have been the decis. Its popularity arose from not only its simplicity and elegance, suggesting the efficacy of prayer and the threat of the Last Judgment, but also because it could be easily adapted to the patron's tastes with the addition of secondary scenes and characters, as in the St. Catherine's Monastery where scenes from the life of Saint Eustratios appear on either side of the decis on a Templon beam. Proskyneteria also played a major part in the decoration of the medieval Templon, either as monumental images placed on the piers flanking the Templon or as portable images in front of the screen. Proskyneteria of both these types still exist in Cyprus, from Lagudera, now in the Archbishop's Palace in Nicosia, and in St. Neophytos. Sometime between the 11th and 14th centuries, icons and proskyneteria began to be placed in the intercolumnar openings on the Templon. After the Reconquest in 1261, carving on the medieval Templon approached sculpture in the round. From this period, the first wood-carved Templar, or iconostases, were produced. They for most part had a fixed program of icon decoration with 3 levels: the local, the decis, and the festival tiers. Early Russian versions were at chest height, and called thoraxis in Greek. The full-height iconostasis became standard in the 15th century, and probably owes more to 14th century hesychast mysticism and the wood-carving genius of the Russians than anything else. The first ceiling-high, 5-leveled Russian iconostasis was designed for the Cathedral of the Annunciation in Moscow Kremlin by Theophanes the Greek in 1405, and soon copied by his assistant Andrei Rublev in the Cathedral of the Dormition in Vladimir in 1408. Churches with existing Templon. This is a list of known churches which retain their Templon. Some have had icons placed inside, and others are modern reconstructions of the original Templon. St. Christine of Lena, Spain. Hosios Lucas Monastery, Church of the Theotokos, Distimo, Greece. Holy Apostles Church, Athens, Greece. St. Leontius Monastery, Katholikon, Vodokar, Republic of Macedonia. St. Panteleimon Church, or Republic of Macedonia Templon is a modern reconstruction, filled with icons. Hosios Lucas Monastery, Katholikon, Distimo, Greece Templon has been filled with icons. St. John the Forerunner Monastery, Katholikon, Athens, Greece. St. Sophia Church, or Republic of Macedonia Templon is a modern reconstruction, filled with icons. Transfiguration of Our Saviour Church, Christianopolis, Greece Templon is a unique design, an extension of the church walls. Mnemoni, Catholicon, Chios, Greece. Templon is a modern reconstruction. Theotokos Peribleptis Church, or a Republic of Macedonia. Templon has been filled with icons. Panagia Chalkion, Thessaloniki, Greece. Templon has been filled with icons. Saint Mary in Cosmedene, Rome, Italy. St. George Church, Staro-Nagoricane, Republic of Macedonia. Templon has been filled with icons. Kaisriani Monastery, Catholicon, Athens, Greece. St. Nicholas Church, Ceres, Greece. Templon has been filled with icons. Transfiguration Church, Amphissa, Greece. St. Panteleimon Church, Gorno-Nerezi, Republic of Macedonia. St. Eleftherios Church, Athens, Greece. Templon is a modern reconstruction. Porto Panagia Church, Pylae, Greece. Templon has been filled with icons. St. Nicholas Orphanos Church, Thessaloniki, Greece. Decani Monastery, Catholicon, Decani, Kosovo. St. Catherine Church, Thessaloniki, Greece. Templon has been filled with icons. Holy Apostles Church, Thessaloniki, Greece. Templon has been filled with icons. Prophet Elijah Church, Thessaloniki, Greece. Templon has been filled with icons. St. Mark's Basilica, Venice, Italy. Gallery. Photos of existing Templon within churches. Some have had icons placed between the columns. Hosios Lucas, Church of the Theotokos. Hosios Lucas, Catholicon. Church of St. Christine of Lena. Church of the Holy Apostles in Athens. Church of St. Panteleimon in Ohrid. Church of St. Mary in Cosmedene. Church of St. Panteleimon in Gorno-Nerezi. Church of St. Eleftherios in Athens. Church of St. Nicholas Orphanos in Thessaloniki. Church of the Holy Apostles in Thessaloniki.